Hi, I'm Carl Franklin. Welcome to the .NET Show. In this episode, we're talking to Microsoft's Jonathan Dick about the new Maui features in .NET 6 Preview 4. But before we get started, check out this website right here. My sponsor, DevExpress, is bullish about Maui. So much so that they want you to have their Xamarin Forms tools for free. Go to devexmaui.the.netshow.com to see for yourself. So without any jokes about Canadian bacon, let's talk to Jonathan. Coming right up on the .NET Show. All right, here we go. You're looking at the screen of Mr. Jonathan Dick from Microsoft. And Jonathan, how are you?
Doing very well. How about yourself?
Fantastic. I'm really glad you said yes to join me on the .NET Show. Maui is coming faster than I thought it was going to come, and there's stuff we need to know.
Yeah, it's coming faster than I think everybody thought. It certainly feels like it's busy these days, but it's all great. We're making a lot of progress, and really excited to see all the previews coming out, and you'll see another one landing soon, or maybe by the time this goes out.
So what's new in .NET 6 Preview 4 in the Maui world?
So one of the very first things that's kind of helpful finally is we've got some templates now. So if we look at our .NET new list of templates here, you can see we've got a Maui template, we've got a Maui Blazor template as well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of another new interesting thing. And, I know we're talking about Maui today, but I think when we originally spoke, you kind of said, hey, can we talk about some Blazor things? So I think we'll sprinkle a little bit of that in here as well today.
Okay. Yeah. I do another show called Blazor Train, and I've been keenly aware of, what's coming down, but we were never really sure what form it was going to take because there were so many options. There was the Blazor experimental mobile bindings for Xamarin Forms, and that obviously had to be redone for either for Maui or for the next generation of Xamarin Forms. Turns out to be Maui. So yeah, I'm interested in that a little bit, but I really want to talk about, how Xamarin Forms gets to Maui, not only our projects that we're writing today, but maybe third parties as well. How does a third party component, either vendor or community project, upgrade their components to Maui?
Yeah, so this is an area that we've been spending a lot of time and just planning, previously to start an implementation of things. And we know that there's a lot of people out there that have Xamarin Forms assets and projects, and they've spent a lot of time and effort in them. And so we want to make those people and those projects as successful as possible in getting over to Maui. And we want everyone to move over to Maui quicker, right? Because that's where we want to be working. So
Right.
Sort of the biggest kind of takeaway is that Xamarin Forms to Maui is kind of an evolution, right? So it's a lot of kind of renaming of things, of new namespaces, and there's a few new changes here and there, and a few kind of different ways of approaching how you build your app and move your app over.
Right.
But the big amount of effort is really just taking your code base, updating the namespaces, changing some of the XML namespaces in your XAML files. The XAML API is basically exactly the same as it was. And so that means you can pretty much copy paste over your project code, recompile it, and it's going to mostly work. And one of the things that we've done with that is we've got this concept of these renderer shims. So when we're talking about forms to Maui, one of the bigger changes we've made in sort of architectural terms is we're moving to this pattern called handlers, which are a different approach and a more decoupled approach from what your cross-platform control code and how it maps to the native code on each platform. So if I've got like a label in Maui, a XAML label control, and it actually maps obviously to like an Android label control, an iOS UI label control, the right actual platform specific thing. And in the past, we had these things called renders, which was really tightly coupled to those native controls and how things map together. And now we've kind of removed that layer of coupling and made it so that you've got handlers and this different architecture, and it's kind of easier to work with the native things and customize them.
So what I remember about custom renderers is that you would use these on the platform itself. Like if the default button looked different on iOS, which in fact it happens to. You need a custom renderer in the iOS project itself that did some native UI stuff just to make that button look the same on all three platforms. But now I guess with this handlers thing, you've moved that up into the UI layer. Is that right?
Yeah, we've created a what we call internally anyway, and even the source code, a Maui core layer. And this core layer is removed from XAML and removed from data binding and removed from the MVVM pattern. And the idea there is that we want all of those like platform abstractions to the native controls to be accessible to other people to make other things. So one of the popular experiments that we've got going right now is Comet, which is sort of an MVU style way of writing C# code to generate your UI. And that is the cool thing about that is based on top of Maui core. And so they're leveraging the same mappings to native controls that we have in Maui core for Comet as we do now in the XAML controls for Maui. And you can even like mix and match controls from Comet and Maui together because of this decoupling.
So Comet is a way that you can use, just to reiterate what you just said to make it clear, you can use C# to generate what you would normally do in XAML.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. So that's cool. I know a lot of people that would prefer to stay in code, completely in code, because XAML baffles them. And then adding new XAML rules and XAML types is just, adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah, and I think when we start seeing like the way that the Blazor kind of pattern of coding things is maybe a little, is not MVU, but it's a little bit more close to that style in some respects. Like one of the classic examples of XAML, which is kind of gets to be kind of a pain, is like I want to take a string and I want to format it a certain way and manipulate it a certain way. And suddenly, I'm starting to deal with type converters and making all these classes and registering them and using them. And it's a little bit clunky. So I really like the C# style for that kind of stuff too.
True. All right. Well, show us what you got.
Yeah. So we looked at the templates here. We've got Maui Blazor. And so, I could do a .NET new Maui Blazor app. And I'm not going to run that right now because I've got one kind of nicely open here already.
Okay.
So when you do a new template out of the box here, the first thing you'll notice, and if you saw the build demos, we've got a couple extra projects here hanging around for Windows. We're working on getting rid of those. That's going to happen, hopefully very soon. We've got some things in progress there. So I'm excited about that. But it is kind of nice that we can actually run Windows projects.
Yeah.
So the big thing that I really like about Maui, or one of the big things, there's a lot of big things, is this concept of this one project. So if you remember from your Forms projects, you used to have, an iOS project, an Android project, whatever. Now we've got this just one project node here. Right. And this is going to contain all of your different platform targets. And so if we were to go into the targets here, into the project file and take a look, it's actually just a multi-targeted project. And this has kind of been around for a while in .NET. So we're leveraging this way of combining multiple TFMs into one project to make your actual iOS and Android and Catalyst and everything apps. So we've got all those listed, we're outputting an application. We've got this now single project option set up. And that is going to enable us to start to share some of the things kind of more cross-platform between applications. So we sat down and we said, there's a lot of stuff that you're doing over and over again for each platform that kind of every platform has this concept of, right? So I've got an application title. Sure. I've got an application identifier. Like every platform has that idea. Why should you have to go write code into your info plist file and then your Android manifest file and your package manifest file on Windows? Let's do that for you. So that's what we're starting to do.
Great.
The other part of that, that's kind of mildly exciting. The more exciting part of that is stuff like app icons and splash screens and images. So
that's right, because images are typically handled differently on the different platforms, and that was another. Oh, geez, why am I doing this kind of?
Yeah,
point.
Exactly. And so we want to try and make that easier. So, we've got this concept of a splash screen here. And if I just go load up, I've got a couple apps installed here. Let's load up this one. It should give you this nice little splash screen.
Nice.
And that was all just generated from, hey, here's a vector graphic that we want to, center on the splash screen. And here's the background color for the page that we want.
Cool.
And you can customize this more, and you can still always get to the platform specific things if you want to. So on Android, we've got these folders here still for Android and iOS and everything. And
I thought there was a platforms folder that these were under. Is that changed?
You know what? We've been talking about where to nest this, and I think that might be where we end up. As a preview 4, we're still not nesting them under there, but I think you can kind of start to see from the order of things, right? Like it gets a little bit messy. So that's one of the changes I think we'll be making. So you'll probably have an Android folder under the platforms folder. And then here you can see this is all your old Android specific resources. If you want to stick stuff here, you can still do that. We're not going to prevent you from doing that. We just want to make it easier to do it in the shared code space as much as possible.
Right.
And so we've got images, and like you said, on Android, there's 6 different resolutions you need to generate for each image. Then iOS has 3, and it's a big mess. So let's do that for you. We've got vector images that you specify in your shared in your resources folder. These don't have to be vectors, but if you have them, it's kind of handy because that gives you a really nice, obviously resizing for each of those densities. Same idea for fonts. We've got a fonts folder. This has been kind of historically a pain because every platform does it a little bit differently, and iOS requires you to add it to the info plist file. So we actually take those files, we generate all that for you, and then you can start to call into your code for them. So this really makes the project simple, and I really love it. This has kind of been the dream. This has been a dream of mine for a long time. I created this thing called Resizetizer, which takes your images and does that. And that, that's actually what became the foundation of how we're handling images today, which is kind of fun.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Excellent. Brush with greatness.
It's all that spare time doing things that kind of really bleed into the territory of what I do every day. So it's
awesome.
The team, the Maui team, we're all super passionate about the project. And this is kind of what you see, right? Everyone kind of works on these things and we love it.
Hey, I got this little thing that I came up with, and we might be able to use it. All right, put it in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the basic structure of this project. And so the other kind of cool thing that we've started doing now is in your platform specific code. And like I said, we're not hiding these from you necessarily. These kind of boilerplate classes may go away with some source generators eventually. That's kind of where I'd like to see it go.
Okay.
And maybe we'll source gen a partial class of it, right? So you could still add your own implementation to it if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
But these things used to be full of overload method or overridden methods, and you'd have a on create and an on resume and an on permission request results and all these kinds of things. And what happens is when you installed plugins from the ecosystem, most of them would say go into this file in Android.
Yep.
Add this stuff here, go in iOS, add this stuff here. That kind of gets messy. Yeah. It's not that fun.
It's not that bad. I mean, but it's just an extra step, right?
It's an extra step. And one of the things that I think gets frustrating for some library authors too is the more of these things that you have, Essentials was up to 5 or 6 different methods in Android that you had to go add an init thing to kind of pass on the calls. And so it's easy to kind of make a mistake when you're doing that, right? As a developer. And then you get bug reports. Oh, why isn't this working? Well, you forgot to add this method, and not fun.
Yeah.
So we're introducing the host builder pattern that, if you've done ESP.NET, you're familiar with this, right? And so it's a little different, but we're still using the actual hosting extensions, abstractions that we ship, in Microsoft. And so a lot of the things you could start to kind of mix and match in the future if you want to from other implementations that exist.
That's great.
So we've got a host builder here, and there's a few things going on in this sample. We've got this kind of forms compatibility. So I mentioned renders before.
Yeah.
And the goal has never really been to let you consume an assembly that was compiled against Xamarin Forms within Maui. So anything that's out there that has renders and stuff, you're still going to have to go recompile it against .NET 6 and Maui. But once you do that, and with the minimal code changes you have, you could still go use the renderers. So what's happening here is this compatibility call is kind of saying, like, let's go set up all of the renderer shims that we have, just so that they're available to use. So like, even if we have handlers for controls in Maui, you could still kind of opt back to go back to the renderers if you thought, hey, this doesn't behave quite the same for me. Let's take a step back and like use the old thing for a moment while we kind of get our app upgraded to Maui.
Now, is there a time limit on that? Like, James told me that Xamarin Forms, as it is, in the latest iteration, is only going to be supported maybe for a year or 2 years, or what's the time limitation?
There's a limit. Yeah, that's basically about right. Like 1 year, I think, is about what we've committed to for Forms itself. Now, that's like Forms in its old kind of assembly and NuGet package form, right? Okay. So these are actual renders that come over from Forms that we've renamed into the Maui namespaces and everything. So these will be supported for some time. They'll probably get marked as obsolete fairly shortly after we launch things, but they'll be around for a little while.
All right, good. Excellent.
Yeah, and then we're registering, Maui. We're setting up the actual Microsoft dependency injection provider. We don't use it by default necessarily because we kind of want to not force you into that and keep things as lean as possible until you opt in. But if you're using Blazor, that's a requirement for Blazor. Then we've got just a call to use the Maui app. And this is like your main entry point for your application. And we could go in there and see where you kind of create the initial window and everything.
And that's pretty standard if you're used to doing Blazor anyway.
Exactly.
All this stuff should be very familiar to you.
Yeah. And so setting up some fonts that we had already opted into, we're just giving them an alias so that in our XAML code, we don't have to type in the whole file name.
Right.
And then, you've got your typical kind of configure services here and some Blazor stuff set up for it. So
what's the difference on a phone between add scoped and add singleton? I imagine nothing.
Yeah, no, we're just using, like, if you call into using this Microsoft DI provider, like that's just the same thing that's running on ASP.NET. And that's one of the reasons that we need to use this for Blazor is they do use scoping. So that's got to be there.
But they both behave the same in terms of, behavior. Because there's only one user. Yeah.
There's only one user, and we're all one BCL of .NET now, which is nice.
So cool.
So if I go and launch the actual app here, this is a Blazor hybrid app, right? So this is running on Android. And so the neat thing is, like, Blazor's kind of focused on desktop for .NET 6, but it does work on mobile, which is kind of cool.
Sure.
So, we've got kind of what you'd expect here, the normal hello world sample. And if we look at the source for it, if we go to the page, to the main page here, the interesting thing here is now, this is XAML, right? We're in a Xamarin, what would have been a Xamarin Forms page, which is now a Maui page.
Yep.
And it's just a XAML page with a Blazor web view control in it. And this is kind of the launching point into it. So you can mix and match here too, which is kind of the exciting thing.
This Blazor WebView, is this what came out of Steve Sanderson's kind of experimental window project?
Yeah, I think that was kind of the initial launching of this the concept.
Web window,
I know,
right?
Yeah, and so Elon Lipton has been working closely with us for the last while now, and he's been working on making this the reality in Maui, right? So
wow.
I think he lifted Steve's kind of experiment and has been doing some things with getting the web view in, and like you mentioned before, the mobile Blazor bindings, or I always say it, I don't remember the right order. Is it mobile Blazor bindings or Blazor mobile bindings?
It doesn't matter. Yeah. We know what you're talking about.
So like that part of it is still kind of undecided. I think where we're going with it, like it's a cool experiment, and I think there's value there. But at the end, for .NET 6, like this is kind of where we want to be, mixing
certainly
Blazor
works.
and Maui.
And you can I don't want to take up so much time with Blazor questions, but with the Blazor WebView, you do get access to the native functions on the phone, right? I mean, this is Maui app.
Well, that's a lovely segue into what I kind of wanted to look at next. So I took this sample that I just showed here, and I've changed it a little bit.
Okay.
So I've done some coding changes here. So the first thing that you'll recognize here, this is the same main page that was showing up here, and I'm gonna run this while we're looking at it.
Cool.
So I've got the web view here, and I think where a lot of the kind of powerful use of both of these things together comes is you can start mixing and matching these kind of native views alongside with this web view. So if you want to bring assets over that you've got, but you kind of want to go to the next level for your native experience, you can totally do that, right? So you can see I put all this stuff in a grid. I've got another grid here, and I'm just using some really silly UI stuff. I am not a UX designer.
That's
obviously.
okay. All we really need to know is that we can access the resources from within inside the Blazor code and vice versa. And if we can do that, we can do anything.
Yeah, then you're great, right? So I've got this, I've kind of set it up. And the first thing you'll notice is like that navigation bar is now gone from that initial sample.
Yeah.
So if we actually go look at, the layout here, I just commented that bit out, right?
Yeah.
Gone. Don't need it here. Want to use the native Chrome. So you could imagine a world where, like, if I had a tab bar here, right, you might have a couple different Blazor web views on different pages within that tab page, and that tab page would be like a native Chrome on the OS, and it would look and feel native because it is native. And so you can start kind of mixing and matching.
What I love about this is if you've been programming Blazor for the last year and a half or whatever, and you really like that component model, the binding model, all of that stuff, and XAML just drives you crazy, you can just opt to do it all with the Blazor component model, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's like this kind of shows how you can start migrating over something like you've got that Blazor app, you've got it on web, and maybe for desktop, like you're happy to have the full on Blazor view in your Maui app,
right?
And just, use some of the underlying system APIs and stuff. But on mobile, like that doesn't cut it.
Now, here's a question. Can you take a Razor class library that you've compiled your Blazor component into and use that in lieu of these pages?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there you go.
I haven't done that yet. I'm a Blazor newbie still, so I'm kind of learning as we go. I've been telling Daniel Roth, I'm just I'm starting to learn it. I'll get there.
That's really cool, though. Yeah.
So we've worked really closely with Daniel and Elon and that whole team, and there's a really great relationship there to kind of bring these applications to the next level and really just like meet you where you're at. If you're coming from XAML and you want to be there, great, be there. If you're coming from Blazor, be there. So let's take a look at some of these parts of the code that I've changed just to give you an idea of what's possible here. So you can see I've got this device orientation thing. So I kind of hijacked the survey prompt here. Mm-hmm. And I'm just kind of binding this orientation field that I've got set up, which is this quaternion. Yeah. And in this code, all I'm doing is calling into the Essentials APIs. And I'm doing this directly from Blazor, right? So I've got this orientation sensor, start listening to it, give me some, event callbacks. I'm thinning out the data a bit just to make sure I'm not doing all sorts of crazy stuff. But like the cool thing here is like, let's go into the emulator controls and simulate, moving the device around, and that just wires right up.
Look at you.
Yeah, so we can access all that sensor data. Like this is Android sensor data directly from
my brain is exploding because of the mashup here. I mean, it's just so cool.
And it gets even more weird. So let's do this next. So I've got this pick a file link, right? So if I go back to my initial layout here, my index page, I've just got a link, and I'm calling into my pick file method.
Okay.
And this is going to do a couple things. So first, I'm calling from Blazor again back into the Essentials API. We've got this file picker, which is in and of itself a platform abstraction around the native file pickers on each thing. So on Android here, when I go to pick a file, it's going to launch. This is the native Android file picker thing, right? So when I go to choose a file, and I'm going to choose a text file, you can take a look again in the code here that I'm just getting that result, and I'm just opening a stream to read the text out, read all the contents of it, update my Blazor variable here, and then that's going to go print out above in this div that I've got here. So if I pick that file, you can see it popped up behind here. Here's the contents of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of rusty with my Latin, so maybe I want to go share this to a friend right away. And to do that,
and all that's built right in.
Yeah, well, and this is the native share dialog. So after I get the file results and kind of pull it up, I'm calling this share file method. I've done some kind of not so nice singleton things here just for the demo.
That's okay.
But I can go navigate to that code definition. And this is going back to my XAML page code behind even, right? So I'm back into my XAML code behind, and this is all Maui XAML code behind stuff. And I'm just passing that file result along and then calling it again back into the Essentials API. Hey, go share this for me and use the native platform thing to do it for me, because I don't want to have to write it differently for each platform.
Interestingly, my brain is going to, wow, if I'm going to use MVVM, I have to pick a horse, don't I?
Yeah.
But yeah, I can.
Yeah, exactly. And you can start to see like the kind of going between both worlds, and it just gets kind of crazy here, right?
In a good way.
And so, yeah, and yeah, exactly. And so the other thing that, I kind of tried to do here is I like I said, if you could conceive of having like tab bar at the bottom that navigated between two Maui pages. So if I click this counter button, so this is that same counter page that we had in Razor here. I've got just the same code, but I've added one more line of code here, this show counter button. And again, I'm going to kind of go back and forth between worlds here and go to my code behind for the XAML again. And because we're in a multi-targeted project, I can start to do some kind of fun things here too. So let's if-diff around Android, and then we've got access to the Android APIs. Like this isn't Maui, right? This is like Android projections of the actual Android API. And so they have this method called toast, and it's .make text, and it's kind of this weird thing where I have to find the application context and give it everything and finally show it. And so if I hit the counter button, we get a little toast down in the corner because that's what we did.
Very cool.
Yeah, so it's this kind of crazy melding of both worlds, and you can start to see where you can pull in assets from Blazor and mix them together, and like you said, pull in other components that you might already have if they're third party or your own. You can have multiple web views on one page if you want. The sky's the limit.
Right. I mean, you're using a grid right here, but it could just as easily be a stack layout or anything else in XAML.
Yeah, exactly.
So cool. Well, what else can you show us?
This, of course, would all run in the other platforms. I don't have that set up right now to demo for you, but we could just as easily go run this on Windows or on Mac Catalyst, on iOS. That's kind of the goal with Maui, is that, you've got that code and it can run everywhere. And even with, Windows, you're not going to be able to run your Catalyst app on Windows just yet, but you can, run your things on all the platforms that you're able to be coding on.
It blows my mind that I could conceivably write a Mac desktop application with Blazor.
Yeah.
What?
Absolutely.
I mean, that
absolutely
never occurred to me when I first started learning Blazor.
And I don't know if you checked out the build demo. Obviously Daniel Roth did one where he's doing just that. He's got a Mac Catalyst app and he's running, he's running the Blazor app in it. But then he's showing how to kind of mix in some native stuff too, right? So on Mac Catalyst, like we went ahead and added a tray icon, which is just something you can't really do so easily from like an Electron app that's just kind of web based. Like there might be APIs and stuff to get in there at some level, but like we're giving you raw access to the underlying stuff from the same process, from C# and from all of the native APIs.
Here's a question out of left field. If we were doing a Mac Catalyst app, for example, and I wanted access to the basic Mac APIs for doing stuff like accessing, video recording, audio recording. I mean, I've seen what native Mac code looks like. Yep. I don't want to do that. I mean, how can we possibly access all that stuff easily?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think we're really pushing for, and we're certainly talking to some of the more like popular community plugins and stuff for Xamarin, is there's such a wealth of that kind of thing out there already on NuGet. So if you just search NuGet.org for like Xamarin or plugin or Xamarin plugin, it's going to come up with just tons of results of really good stuff. And I'm pretty sure there's at least a couple out there already that handle like cross-platform audio recording. I'm not sure about video recording necessarily, but there's a few of them out there that just kind of get you started very easily to do some of this stuff.
That's really cool. Yeah. Wow. I'm completely blown away. I mean, this is a great way to dip your toes into Maui. And again, we need to stress that you don't need to stop writing Xamarin Forms applications today because we got you. You're going to be able to recompile your Xamarin Forms components and applications as Maui apps, and they'll just run. Are there any gotchas that we need to look out for when trying to bring our Xamarin Forms apps over?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest kind of piece of advice there is that, we're working on making that experience better too. So, I think you've talked on I heard a .NET Rocks episode or something with talking about some of the try convert and the migrate, like the conversion assistant, whatever that tool's called.
Yeah.
And they're kind of blending those together now into one, right? And so the experience is going to be hopefully that you just point your project or your solution at this tool, and it's going to go help you switch out the references, the package references, the namespaces for your code for Xamarin Forms to Maui, all of like the XML namespace code that you have in your XAML. Mm-hmm. And so it's just going to do all these things for you. And that should get you, if you don't have a terribly complex app, that should get you almost all of the way to the point where either it just compiles or you've got like a few minor touch-ups here and there that it's like minutes of work. So I think that like you said, go write Xamarin Forms today. Like that's a really productive place to be today.
Yeah.
And the migration path is going to be very trivial for you.
And would you recommend using the shell for your Xamarin Forms apps right now? I mean, are non-shell apps going to be harder to move over?
No, I think they'll both be kind of equally easy to move over. And so like shell, we're bringing shell over as well. A lot of people feel really comfortable and productive there. A lot of people kind of like to know, I want to handle that kind of hierarchy myself and figure out my tabs and fly out pages and stuff. So it doesn't really matter which one you want to use. They'll both come over.
That is so cool. Jonathan, thank you very much. This is great. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the next preview. When is preview 5 scheduled to drop?
It's very soon, within weeks of this recording anyway. I'm not sure when we'll see this come out, but wow. Mid-June, look for it.
Oh, great.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Oh, Siri's trying to help too.
That's great, Jonathan. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Please visit blazertrain.com and the .NETshow.com for more great content.